And Cloud Architecture Summit continues. This is the breakout session for IBM, and let me welcome back Ken Parmelee, Director of Cloud Pak for Integration. Ken, welcome.
Thanks, Vance.
You know, before I introduce Ken formally, I just want to make a note. We're proud here at Cloud Architecture Summit to welcome Ken. It's one of the first venues where IBM can discuss in some detail the big IBM Red Hat merger, which has become official. For his part, Ken leads strategy for IBM integration and helps businesses achieve success in their integration modernization objectives. His expertise focuses on cloud, hybrid cloud, and multi-cloud integrations for this point, and he brings expertise together with app-centric Agile integration. And prior to joining IBM, Ken is a former Gartner analyst, so he knows well the ways to make sure that IT and business collaborate on most effective integration and app projects. And in his session today, Integration Modernization and the Agile Integration Approach, Ken's going to talk to us about the hurdles that people face when it comes to achieving that sort of efficiency and the best ways to measure success from those projects. To drive new apps and services, many companies have shifted to Agile development, but few have actually adopted Agile integration. And this gap can be pretty crucial as it impedes how an app gets to the data and services it needs. So Ken is going to take us through the values of Agile integration in combination with integration modernization, how to make sure that your projects stay on track and get the innovation and efficiency that you're looking for. We're going to take a look at the IBM Cloud Pak in real life, thanks to a demo that Ken has brought. So before I hand it to Ken, just a quick reminder, you can download his slides, and let me recommend that you do. Just click the big red button under the view screen. You'll see that Ken's slides will be available for you without any registration. You'll also see we've got some other great white papers and other downloads from the IBM team, again, available for you right away. And we love to hear your questions and comments. So to communicate with Ken, just type in the submit a question box. And now, Ken, let me turn it back to you and tell us about integration modernization and the Agile integration approach.
Thanks, Vance. I'm really excited to be with you guys today. So we're really going to cover this topic from a couple of different angles. First off is really some of the impacts that the market has had on why integration is changing. And then second, what is Agile integration? And then we'll really jump into some of the things that you can do to rapidly get into modernizing your integration. So when you look at what's happening with cloud, there is a large number of new native development done in the cloud, but there's very few enterprise workloads that actually are moving to the cloud. And there's a number of reasons why this is true, but the real significant ones all have to do with the fact that you have these existing systems, you have this existing data and applications in your enterprise, and moving those things is not simple. They all have dependencies, they're varying sets of requirements, and in many cases, wholesale moving of those workloads doesn't actually provide you a lot of value. However, getting to their data and some of those things really does provide new value and new applications and APIs and things like that. And so really, when you look at the challenge today, Agile integration focuses on how you get from the left-hand side here to the right-hand side, meaning monolithic ESB type architectures where it takes a very long time and maintenance windows to kind of do the updates, to move new updates in and change integration from point products, meaning that I've got a variety of different things that I use for integration that drive complexity in both the skills, but also in how I manage those integrations. And then the siloed integration teams, which tend to be those integration specialists, which are really important in terms of how we drive forward with this Agile integration, but that are constantly challenged to keep pace with all the changes that are happening on the app side, on the API side, and all the new things that are being exposed outside of the organization. So when you look at the right-hand side, Agile architecture is really an approach to move from that monolithic style of architecture into the rapid pace of Agile integration development, which means that you're fine-grained deployment. That also means I have an ability to very rapidly make changes to any part of my integration and really allow for the dev teams to be more part of the integration process. Hybrid integration platforms help you to do this in a centralized way with consistent management and a consistent architecture. And then finally, decentralized ownership allows for many different participants to come into the process of integration development. And so with those things, companies can see some major enhancements, both in terms of cost reductions and in terms of time for how they are now able to get to these modern and efficient integration styles. So if we talk about modernization, it obviously impacts more than just the technology you use. It's about modernizing the people and process, meaning the skills and how you deploy and those kinds of things. But it also comes down to a consistent kind of architecture that you can deploy anywhere you need to, in multiple clouds, in on-premise, against SaaS applications, and then the infrastructure and technology that all kind of provide for that uniform methodology to be agile. In any organization where you have a divergence of tools and skills and all those kinds of things, it's hard to gain efficiency. But more importantly, now with various clouds having their own architectures, plus your on-premise environment, plus your SaaS applications, if you don't have some consistency across all those things, it's pretty impossible to be efficient and to be agile as you develop your integration and you evolve it over time. So 3 of the primary tenets here are really around fine-grained deployment, meaning that ability to deploy instances of integration down to a per integration level instead of in the bus model. That allows for that agility, but it also allows for some autonomy on the teams for how quickly they want to adapt and change their integration to the backends. This is really important because reducing those dependencies and reducing the downroad requirements of integration really is one of those keys to being fast. Second, around decentralized ownership, this really allows for the different teams to participate in the integration development process. Now, this does not mean that there's not oversight still, that there's not a common way of managing the way that integrations are deployed and those kinds of things, but a means for other developers and other folks to be a part of and participate in the integration development and creation process along with the integration specialists. And then finally, cloud native infrastructure. And the reason this one is so important is we all know that part of the value of clouds is the elasticity, the scalability, the ability to spin up and spin down instances very rapidly for tests and things like that. And having that kind of an infrastructure that allows for that same agility and elasticity in my development of integration is key as well. And so this is why this is another major tenet here. If you're leveraging the existing integration technologies, getting to that speed and that elasticity is something that's pretty impossible to do. So IBM has focused on this area with the Cloud Pak for integration. And one of the things that when you consider is really important here is that there's this common set of integration challenges today. Part of it is the sprawl that we just talked about before. I've got data and apps all over the place now. They're not all on-premise in my data center. The second is really that need to drive speed to keep pace with the new applications and APIs and microservices I'm building. The third is really around the developer being able to reuse and share integration and collaborate on integration development so that that is not another bottleneck in the creation of integrations. The unification of integration technologies so that I can use the best pattern or best method of integration for the challenge I'm trying to handle. So think about today, many integrations, it's not a siloed thing. You may use an API that fronts a message queue that behind it has an app integration. Those tool chains or chains of integration are quite normal these days, and having an ability to use those right parts for the type of application or type of integration I'm building are quite key. And then lastly, having a lot of participation from varying teams in that development of integration really drives not only for speed, but it drives for consistency that each team can kind of help with the overall challenge of volume that the integration teams are dealing with today. You'll note that on the bubble to the right, by 2022, Gartner is predicting that 65% of large organizations will have implemented a hybrid integration platform, which is what the Cloud Pak for integration is. That's really due to all of these challenges. If you're not doing something that provides for some centrality and some uniformity and some consistency, then your ability to gain speed and really adapt for the way that applications and integrations are being built today is going to be quite impossible. And so really that's the focus, and that's why you see the big shift happening now. So we talked about moving from monoliths to microservices, that fine-grained deployment capability. Not all applications are going to be refactored to microservices. Unlike what you hear from a lot of the public cloud vendors, you are going to adapt things at their value. So some things you'll just reuse in place. Other things you will want to rewrite or write parts of. So it's important that as we make these decisions on how we're going to deploy our integration and how we're going to build our integration, that we really have an eye towards how we're going to do that from an agility, scalability, and resilience standpoint, because all of these are aspects of how you scale modern integration in a way that's effective and allows for you to take advantage of new technology that allows for this to happen whether you deploy it on premise or in a cloud or against a SaaS application. And as I do that, one of the things that I'm really, really hyper focused on from a fine-grained deployment standpoint is that I'm doing that in a way that allows for the individual departments and integration developers to participate in that process and run their parts of integration at the speed they need for their applications. When we talk about organizational decentralization, this is really not saying that the integration specialist no longer is of value or even that they take a backseat. It's quite the contrary. When you look at what happens in organizations when they start to have hundreds and thousands of integrations, whether it be APIs or app integrations or whatever, no one department of integration specialists can actually scale to that. And so when you look at this, the upper set of folks, those are application developers, the middle set of folks are integration specialists, and the bottom set of people are more your administrators and the people who deploy environments and those kinds of things. You want them to work in teams as Scrum teams to really be able to effectively get agile. And that means that they will be running at varying different paces, but you have that participation of the various different individuals in the team with the guidance of the integration specialists who really know what it is to have effective integration, things you need to consider like brittleness of integration and those kinds of things. Once you have kind of adapted to this model, not only can you run much faster, but you can effectively maintain some oversight and maintain the visibility you need into how integration is done, even though you are allowing for others to participate in the integration creation process. Now, there's a lot of different benefits to taking these approaches, but container-based is one of the keys to getting here. And the reason this is such a focus is when you look at cloud-native infrastructure, which is what is provided by containers, you have that ability to get to all these varying different things. You can build the agility, of course, of speed because you can adapt and update at will pretty much. You have the team productivity enhancements that you gain, mostly because at this level, I can deploy instances of containers for particularly pre-prod for myself. I don't have to get into all of the complexity of requesting environments and all the things that we've had to do in the past. And then that fine-grained resilience we talked about before allows those integrations to run at the best speed that that particular application requires. So it becomes less about maintenance windows and all those kinds of things and much more about the pace that the team can drive at for the app and integration development and what they're trying to achieve. On the bottom, these three really focus more on the administrative side of things and kind of the management side of things. Obviously, you want scalability and optimization. And with the ability of container-based approaches, you can automatically scale up and scale down based on usage. You have a number of different controls around that as well. You need the operational consistency, both in deployment, but also in management of these capabilities as you put them out there. And then finally, the component portability so that I have the independence from any one environment. So if today I have a large investment in a certain public cloud and tomorrow I decide that there are other services on a different cloud that are of advantage, I need to be able to take advantage of those and leverage those things in the most effective means. And so by virtue of a container-based approach, I have the ability to do that very rapidly. Underpinning the container-based strategy for the Cloud Pak for integration is Red Hat OpenShift. And so we'll talk a bit more about this later, but one of the really exciting aspects of the acquisition that IBM made of Red Hat is really the fact that now we have this enterprise class-based container technology, which is underlying our modernization capabilities in the integration space. So the Cloud Pak for integration really focuses on all these challenges that we just talked about. It really focuses down on the fact that we need a set of capabilities that allow us to get fast. We need them in a way that we can operationally consistently manage. And we need to be able to provide these in a way that allows for the speed and decentralization we talked about before. So looking to the left, the container-based platform here is OpenShift. And OpenShift provides for the ability to deploy on-premise or in the Red Hat OpenShift services, which are on every cloud today. and provide for that consistent means of deploying, consistent set of tooling, all of the things that you would expect from an enterprise grade set of integration capabilities. On top of those are a set of operational services that provide for all of the things that you really need for consistency across clouds. And this is a key and important point. When I start to deploy integration all over the place with a central set of operational services, I can manage them uniformly from one place. So whether that's logs from all of those environments or monitoring from all those environments, that way of doing it centrally provides for the means to scale the way that I need to without learning different clouds and different methods and having disconnected views of performance. On top of that, we provide all the integration capabilities around APIs, app integration, the enterprise messaging, events, which are Kafka, and high-speed data transfer as a part of it as well, all packaged with integration security built in. And this is critical because, again, when you start thinking about these projects, and I mentioned this before, but those chains of integrations that you use today, there will be varying different kinds of integration that I use based on what kind of project I'm on. And so having that breadth of capability that really encompass all of the means of integration really allows me to have that toolkit that I can really rapidly get to the type of integration I need. And we'll show you in a moment in a demo that I'm going to take you through how that works differently and how you have these flows that allow you to progress from building an app integration into creating an API, deploying that API, and then sharing it internally for collaboration with other developers as well. Second here that's really important is that ability to deploy anywhere, as we mentioned before, and the fact that that deployment anywhere should allow for the uniformity and the consistency that we talked about. And then finally, enterprise grade. And when we're talking about enterprise grade here, that's not a throwaway term. We really are talking about that scalability wherever you are, that ability to have security wherever you are, and a means that you know is really going to give you what you need, that you can assure delivery of integration, and you can assure that the transactions that flow through the integration technologies are consistently scalable as well. So with that, we're going to take you into a demo of the platform and some of the capabilities of the Cloud Pak for integration. So here what you're going to see is we have a palette of pre-built integrations. We want to create an integration that backs up to an app backend and that allows for us to expose it as an API. So here, basically, we're creating an API flow, which is an app integration. We're giving the model a name. And as we do that, it already has a set of pre-built screens for me to really rapidly kind of add what I need. So here I'm going to add a set of properties for that app integration. And I can also define what kinds of things these are, so numbers and strings and Booleans and those kinds of things. And as I do that, I'm defining kind of the model that I want. Now I'm going to create the operations that I want. So in this case, I'm going to retrieve items by ID. And as I do that, it defines the retrieval and the response that I'm going to have for this particular flow. So now I have a basic request response defined, and I'm going to add an integration to this. In this case, I've got in NetSuite all of my details around my inventory and my SKUs. And so I'm going to search for NetSuite. And these are pre-built connectors that already understand the backends that I'm retrieving data from. So here you'll note that it already has a set of defined things that I can retrieve. I'm selecting retrieve items. And so that builds my initial integration into NetSuite. I can now provide for specifically what I want out of there and filter what objects, all of the different things that I need to get that going. Now here, I'm going to test this integration that I've created, and it's built in line. So you can see here that essentially as I've created this app integration, I can try it. And I will get a response. And in this case, you can see at the bottom, it says request was successful. And it's giving me the actual string that it retrieved from the backend. So this is really great because in terms of speed, it's very fast. Now I can take those same integrations that I've created, and these are app integrations, as I mentioned before, and create an API from them. And so now you note here what I'm doing is I'm applying some rate plans to this particular API. I can allow for a set of them that a developer can choose from. And in this case, you can see I'm setting the default rate limit. I can set things like burst limits and all kinds of things as policies. And now I've got a set of plans that can be used as I subscribe to the API. So next, I'm going to publish that API so it's available for my developers to consume. And you'll notice here I'm selecting what catalog it's published into. And as that is pushed out, I've got a note that it's published. And now I'm in my developer portal where I essentially can consume that API as a developer. And so as I go in and actually look at the API, I can see all the availability of it. I can see all of the kinds of capabilities around it. In this case, I'm going to subscribe to it because as a developer, I want to know when there's a change or an update. And once I've done that, I can select the plan I'm going to be using, and that helps me limit my exposure if this is a charged API. And then as I've done that confirmation of the subscription, I not only can leverage the API, but I can get updates to what's changed. Now, as a developer, I may want to take this API and the app the integration that I created and share these internally with my other developers. So the asset repository is a function in the Cloud Pak that allows me to not only take and share those things that I built, but even subcomponents like documents and things like that that are related to building the integration. And you can see here that I'm looking at the integration itself. In this case, it's a JSON spec. And I can browse and use this for a new integration if I want to build a new one off of it as well. But as I mentioned before, I can also collaborate with other developers as I'm building an integration. So it offers a really nice capability to quickly find pre-built and existing integrations, both internal objects and finished objects, and then leverage those with other developers in the organization to reuse to the hilt that I can. And so as we go forward with kind of use of asset repository, offers a reduction of the requirement to build new all the time, because obviously I've got a set of objects that are available to me to leverage. So one of the very exciting things for us with the IBM Cloud Pak for integration is that not only are we one of the first to market with a full hybrid integration platform, but we've got some fantastic capabilities for our clients that really provide for a means to modernize, as we talked about, your integration, not only those who have used IBM products, but anyone who is really driving towards that speed and cost savings in their integration space. One approach that you can take to actually start this modernization process is through our Agile Integration Workshop. This Agile Integration Workshop is focused on really providing for a focus on what it means to get Agile, some of the changes that are necessary, and focus on the business objectives that your organization has. And specifically, this workshop is one that's available for free that allows for you to kind of start to angle towards what are the key aspects of getting Agile for integration that you need to take in terms of steps, but also what are those perfect first MVPs to approach how you start to get to modern integration. So this is a highly recommended upfront step. If you have started that process of modernization or not, it's one that we can provide to you. We have a number of different really great stories around customers who've gained value through this approach, both the Agile integration approach, but also the use of the Cloud Pak for integration. This is one example, but many, many have kind of gone through the stages of starting to adapt to Agile integration and then really fully taking on how you modernize across the teams and the technologies and the architecture together. Once you do that, your ability to gain the big gains of speed and reductions of cost are there. And we've seen this time and time again with our client base. So one of the things to consider is how broadly your organization wants to focus on integration modernization and how deep you really want to take that, because the ability to see some really significant improvement is there. Lastly, there's a number of different assets that we have for you all. And Vance mentioned up front, there's some right here in the sidebar. But in addition to that, there is the Cloud Pak for Integration main page, which will give you more detail on the technology. There's the Agile Integration ebook, which is really quite powerful because it really talks through how you modernize your integration and how you get to Agile integration in a means that everybody can do very effectively. And then finally, as we mentioned before, we have the workshop that we are offering for everyone. If you have any questions on any of those things, of course, contact us. But we are very excited to bring this to you and hope that you've heard some interesting and valuable things in your approach to how integration is changing. All right, and that is the end of the formal presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Vance for any questions that we may have.
Excellent, excellent. Ken, thanks very much for a great session. Great look at the latest technology from IBM, now IBM and Red Hat. And we appreciate the demo, too, to get a real sense of what's going on over there in this new IBM Red Hat world. Great session.
Thank you.
Ken, so many different questions, high level as well as implementation, but certainly one of the themes that has come through loud and clear, and it probably is no surprise, is what can you tell us about the status of IBM and Red Hat, particularly as it regards integration and cloud architecture, and in particular the Cloud Pak?
Great. Yes. IBM and Red Hat are working together very closely through the acquisition. It was really interesting because obviously before the acquisition closes, you can't do much work together. But as soon as it closed, one of the main focuses was really around the integration area and how we incorporate OpenShift into the Cloud Pak so that we can really leverage that enterprise grade scalability and elasticity that OpenShift brings. And so you would have noted that in some of those operational services, we're talking about things like logging and monitoring and tracing and those kinds of things, and having the ability to do those in a true hybrid cloud form, meaning across all of my implementation of integration, whether it's in public cloud or on-prem or any place, is one of the key aspects that unification actually brings. And so it's something we're very excited about. It's something we're very proud about. And what I would tell you is we had a partnership with Red Hat prior to the acquisition close, and we'd already done a good amount of work. So the availability of the Cloud Pak on OpenShift is literally today. That's not something we're waiting for or something that's available later. You can get that right now.
Fantastic, fantastic. And for folks that are looking at different cloud options, certainly the IBM cloud environment, but other cloud options, I would assume that availability with Cloud Pak opens up a lot more possibilities.
Absolutely. You have OpenShift available today on Azure and on AWS and pretty much any cloud you can imagine. So you can deploy into those services on those public clouds today. So it's quite exciting because not only do you have the container control where you can just deploy it wherever you want, but in many of the public clouds, you have existing managed services for OpenShift that you can deploy right into.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just to kind of take a step up in our level of conversation, Agile is such a key word in your presentation, Ken. Let's distinguish Agile from software application, which to many means that an incremental or iterative road to improvement, and Agile integration, which for many folks might think that, well, if integration's in process, it basically means it's broken. It's not really working. In IBM's view, how do you see the theme of Agile being applied to integration?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you look at it, part of the reason you want to get to that fine-grained deployment we talked about is so that you can be more iterative with integration. To your point of if it's not done, it's broken. That has been the way of integration, right? If you don't have a completed integration, then it is clearly not something you want to deploy. But the thing that's really changed is now with applications, my integration tends to change a lot more rapidly, whether that's because I'm adding new fields and things to the back end I want to store, or it's more of a situation of I'm adding additional backends into the same application. I need to do things like data filtering and all kinds of things in the microservices in between. So there are now updates and iterations you make to integration that they may not be at the same fast pace as the application, but they're much faster than what most organizations used to do, meaning quarterly, annual, at most updates of their integrations. You need to be able to do much faster to adapt to the new requirements of applications now.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Here's another question, and I'm sure this is something you run into too. And it says, it sounds from the presentation that the IBM Cloud Pak platform has got capabilities that help developers and the operations people work more closely together. Is that one of the use cases?
It absolutely is. And in addition to that, there's also, as most would kind of see, some shifts in the way that even works today, right? So you think about it, used to be that the ops guys, you put in a request for an environment, takes some number of days, you get it and all that kind of thing. Well, now with this kind of container approach, you can allow developers to stand up their own containers for pre-prod type scenarios all day long if they want. Take them up, take them down, all that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of flexibility in how you administrate the containers. how you put in the oversight of what goes into production as a part of the Cloud Pak as well. But you do have a lot more of that flexibility and the fact that those things work together today as opposed to being completely separate kind of areas. The other thing I would mention, and you would have noted it from the demo, is there are different kinds of integration personas now. There's kind of the business analyst who might use the tool that we're showing, or an integration person who wants to rapidly build something where you're using pre-built integrations and wizard-based drag and drop kind of building of integrations. But those command lines and all the things that the specialist guys know and love still exist as well. And so you've got those different types of personas that can all now collaborate as they build integrations.
Excellent, excellent. And another kind of geeky question, but certainly so important, and that is on security and compliance and those kind of things when it goes to the cloud. Ken, the speaker mentioned several times that the IBM Cloud Pak has support for security and compliance. Could he detail a little bit of how that gets operated and how we make sure that it is secure during runtime?
Sure. Yeah. So we have, as a part of the Cloud Pak, virtual gateways that allow you to actually control the traffic and the security, things like circuit breaker policies that you can apply to integrations and things like that as well. So there's a number of those kinds of policy-based transaction management types of functions that are built into the Cloud Pak. In addition to that, in terms of oversight, we showed an end-to-end deployment as if someone had full control of everything from dev, test to deploy. But of course, you can put in those gates through the software. So it's built in to say that there's an individual or a set of folks that need to approve to go into the next level and those kinds of things. And so a lot of that is really oriented around how your organization is set up for that oversight. But we provide for that capability within the tooling so that you can set up those flows and you can very easily kind of move them along that flow from dev all the way up.
Wow, that's fantastic. So is the idea, Ken, under the covers, that IBM would try to do as much as they can to provide dev teams or even DevSecOps teams the ability to define and implement security and compliance without a lot of that gnarly coding that goes on and might even break between silos?
Yeah, absolutely. Reduce the complexity is absolutely the way that you should think about it. So we really feel like we've provided an end-to-end means to deal with deployment and security with those DevSecOps types of setups.
Really powerful, really powerful. You know, Ken, there's so many different dimensions to this for a cloud architect. I mean, it empowers the developer person. It helps bring automation and configuration to the integration without a lot of coding, helps the runtime guy. How would people go about giving it a test drive or getting hands-on with it so they could see how it would best help them?
Yep, absolutely. So we have public environments that people can go in and to the IBM page and actually give it a try. They can get an environment, they can start using it and really kind of gain experience on what it's like and what it gives them. So that's a great way to get started. The other one, if you're more interested in kind of driving through more of a strategy side, is the garage service that I was talking about before for integration modernization. But either way, in both, you have a great way of touching technology, but also getting some insight on how you modernize going forward.
Excellent, excellent. Ken Parmelee, Director of Cloud Pak for Integration at IBM. Thanks for a fantastic session. Really revolutionary type look at how we can bring the stakeholders that are looking to modernize not just integration, but their whole environment into a cloud-facing enterprise for all sorts of stakeholders. And thanks very much for the demo as well. I think it put a lot of things into crystal context for our audience. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Vance, and really great being with you guys again today.
And as we love to do here, Ken mentioned it several times, we got a link, but not only to the great trial or sandbox environment that Ken mentioned for Cloud Pak, but we've also got some other great resources that will help you learn a bit more about what IBM's design thinking is around this technology and how they're working with Red Hat. Really important themes here going forward. And as you can tell, lots going on in IBM, especially with the IBM Red Hat continued deepening association. So here's a slide that'll take you to some other resources at the IBM website directly. Download Ken's slides. These links will be live. Thanks again, everyone.